Hey guys, welcome back to the season finale of our all-out war safety behind bars campaign. We are up to chapter 7, and this one says Down in Flames. So the summary says, hopes are momentarily raised when a helicopter flies over the prison. However, it quickly becomes apparent that the chopper is in trouble and is crashed nearby. Rick, Glenn, and Michonne don their riot gear and take to the road to see if anyone has survived the crash. So that's where we're at right here. We have Rick, Glenn, and Michonne on one side of the board, and then over here you can see our fiery wreck. Use your imagination with me. That is a car. For the game purposes, it's going to be a helicopter. So for our survivors to win, they have to get across the board, pick up the single supply token that's on the board here, and then get it back off the survivor deployment zone. So if you guys want to jump straight ahead to turn 1, you can use the timestamp down in the description to do that. If not, hang around and we're going to go over the board and what our survivors are equipped with. So in this mission, we're going to have 10 walkers start out on the board. And the board has been diagonally split in half, and all the walkers are on the objective side of the board. We're going to have one single supply token, and that is over there right in front of our crash site. So our survivors have to get across the board, pick that up, and then get back off of the board. All right, so our survivors for this game, we're going to have 3. We're going to have Michonne, Rick, and Glenn. And we're going to have Michonne as the Wandering Nomad. She is going to be equipped with a regular katana and the Stab Veteran skill. We have the Prison Advisor Rick, and Rick is going to be wearing a set of riot gear, a riot helmet, and have a riot baton. And then Glenn is going to be the Prison Guard version, wearing riot gear, a riot helmet, and carrying a riot shield. So we'll take one more look at the board here. Our survivors are going to start over by the billboard. They're going to come across the board, past the blown out house there, over to our wreck site, pick up the supply marker, and get back off the board. So turn 1, the threat here is going to start on 4 because that's what the mission tells us to do. And before we have Glenn go ahead and make his run into the middle of the board, I'm going to ask everyone to go down and hit the subscribe button. Our video has been doing really well lately. Chapter 6 from this was one of my most watched videos so far. There'll be a link up in the top to go watch that if you haven't already. We're using the newly released single player rules that Manic just dropped. So we're going to start out with Glenn. Glenn's first action, he is a tactician this time around. It's weird Glenn not being a runner. He's going to use his tactician ability to reduce the threat by 1 automatically. So our threat is going to go from 4 down to 3. And second action is going to be to make an 8-inch run move right out here into the center of the board. So Glenn moves out here. Glenn also has the Tread Lightly special roll. So what we're going to do now is roll the 50-50 die, and on a badge, he's not going to make noise and draw in that closest walker to him. So here you can see our threat tracker is set to 3, and let's see if Glenn makes noise. So Glenn does not make noise. That walker is going to stay back there where he is. Those are all Glenn's activations. So now we'll come back here to Rick. And he also is going to make an 8-inch run right out there next to Glenn. And the noise that that's going to make is going to draw in the closest walker to Rick. And now for Michonne. Michonne's going to follow along with everyone else. 8-inch run out there to keep up with the rest of the group. So Michonne takes the scenic route around the billboard and winds up right back here behind Rick. And now we're going to move the closest walker within 10 inches to Michonne. So that guy comes over and runs into the fence. All right, so all survivor actions being taken. You can see that there are no kill zones to check for right out there in the middle for right now. So let's go into our first event card, Drawn to Conflict. So for this, we are in All Quiet currently. So this card has no effect. All right, so going into melee combat, we're going to up the threat by 1 to 4. And we only have Rick against 1 walker here for melee. All right, so in melee combat, Rick is going to have a red and a white as his base. And then he is armed with a riot baton, which because he's wearing 3 different pieces of riot gear, that's going to give him an additional white in melee. And he's going to be rolling that against a single purple die for the walker. All right, so Rick is able to remove that walker from play with a headshot. That's all of our melee combat. There's no prone walkers and there's no bites to roll for. So we're going to up the threat by 1 to 5 because of solo play. And we're going to go into our next turn. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start turn 2 here. and the threat has moved up to 5. We're going to start out with Michonne this time around, and Michonne is going to make an 8-inch run straight ahead towards the police car, and that's going to pull in the closest walker to her, which will be the police officer on the passenger side of the car there. Now, because she's already in contact with the car, she's going to move 6 inches around it to try and make contact with Michonne. And she goes from the passenger side now to the driver's side. So now I'll come back here to Rick. Rick is going to go ahead and also make an 8-inch run move up there near Michonne, stopping up here. And that's going to bring the closest walker to him, which will be the guy over by the Jeep. And that leaves us with Glenn. Glenn again is going to use his tactician character type to automatically reduce the threat by 1. So we get back down to 4, still in low threat. And now Glenn is going to make an 8-inch run up between Rick and Michonne. And remember, Glenn has the tread lightly special rule, so we're going to roll again to see if he can not make noise. So Glenn continues to move around in silence as he charges up here into the center of the board and avoids contact with any walkers again. Let's go ahead and check kill zones now. So that walker is going to come over there in contact with Michonne. That's all of the kill zones to move around. So let's go into our second event card, which is Dawn Breaks. And currently our threat is on 4, so we are at low threat. So we're going to add 1 to the threat, shuffle this back in, and draw a second card. And our next card is going to be Hold the Fences. So +1 to the threat again. We're going to go up to 6. And this card says, the player with initiative chooses an eligible walker in contact with a scenery piece with the collapse rule, such as a fence. All eligible walkers within 8 inches of the chosen walker on the same side of the fence move towards the closest part of the fence. There are no walkers in contact, blah, blah, blah. So we just happen to have a walker in contact with the fence. So let's go ahead and move this. So we're going to go ahead there and collapse that fence down, and there are no walkers within 8 inches of him to move. So we just have him throwing down that fence. That's our event card. We're going to up the threat by 1 to 7, and we're going to move into melee, and we're going to start with Rick against a single walker. So Rick against that one walker. So Rick is going to knock his walker back an inch and prone, and now move over to Michonne against a single walker. And this is the Wandering Nomad version of Michonne. So her base melee is a blue. She adds another blue to that because of her katana. And because the katana is sharp and she has the stab veteran skill, we can re-roll any dice that we want to out of this. She's going to be rolling that against 1 purple for this single walker. So we're going to go ahead and re-roll both of the blue dice. I will bring the camera around her to this side of the board, and you can see that Michonne has knocked her walker also just prone. So that's going to be the end of our melee combat. Before we end the turn, we're going to roll for these prone walkers to see if either of them stand back up. All right, so for our prone walkers, we're going to roll the 50-50 die, and on a badge, the walker will stay prone, and on a blank, the walker will stand back up. And we'll start with Rick's walker. And now for Michonne. All right, and unfortunately, all the walkers stand back up. We're going to up the threat by 1 to 8, and that's going to be the end of this turn. All right, we are at the start of turn 3, and the threat is up to 8, so we're at the very bottom of low threat. And we're going to start out by taking Rick and trying to get Rick to lower the threat by 1. So we'll go ahead and roll the 50-50 die for that. So we'll drop the threat back down to 7. And back out here for Rick's second action. You can see how close we're getting to our objective over there. So what we're going to do now is take Rick and have him make an 8-inch run move even closer up there to that. And now we're going to draw in the closest walker to Rick. And then back over here to Glenn for his actions now. Glenn is going to use his tactician again to lower the threat by 1 automatically. So we get that back down to 6. And second action, run straight towards the objective. So Glenn is getting really close there. Unfortunately, now we're going to have to move over the closest walker to Glenn. But don't forget, we're going to roll to see if he makes noise. So let's see if Glenn can keep his streak of silence going. So Glenn continues to defy the odds and roll that badge. and he still has yet to come into contact with any walkers. All right, now with Michonne back here, we're just going to get her to, I'm not sure if it's going to be a run action or a sneak. We're going to get her to move around to about the back of the police car there to be in the kill zone of the police officer walker and the walker here in the green hat. So that turned out to be about a sneak action. So what we're going to do with our second action is try and reduce the threat even lower. So we try and get Michonne to hold her nerve as well. And the threat comes down to 5. All right, so after all the survivor actions, you can see that this time around, we're going to have some kill zones to move in. So we've now got all 3 of our survivors engaged in melee combat after kill zones. Let's go ahead and pull out our next event card. And our next card is Surrounded. So +1 to the threat, up to 6. All threat levels, the player with initiative must choose 1 standing survivor. Place the kill zone over that model, and then blue walkers immediately enter play. But instead of being placed at the edges of the table, they are placed at the edges of a template. So we're definitely going to have enough room and walker models. So let's go ahead and roll a blue die. All right, so we roll 2, and now what we're going to do is choose Rick, put the kill zone over top of him, and then bring on 2 new walkers just outside of his kill zone. And we're going to drop those 2 walkers right there. So event card over, we're going to up the threat by 1 to 7 and go into melee combat. And we'll start out with Rick against 1 walker again. So Rick just manages to tie combat. So we're going to push that walker back an inch and they stay on their feet. Now come over to Michonne against 2 walkers in combat this time. All right, so Michonne against 2 walkers. She's going to have her 2 blue dice, and the walkers, because of the outnumbering rule, are going to have 3 purple against her. So Michonne wins combat by 1, so we're going to move 1 walker back an inch and move another walker back and knock it prone. And now over here to Glenn. Glenn has the slippery special rule, which says that when he's actually in combat, he can roll the 50-50 die, and on a badge, he will slip out of combat. So let's go ahead and see if Glenn can avoid fighting again. So Glenn, continuing to be a pacifist, rolls another badge, and that walker is shoved back 1 inch, leaving Glenn out of melee combat. A 1 prone walker to roll for now, so we'll go ahead and see if that walker stands back up. All right, so that walker is going to stay prone. We're going to up the threat by 1 to 8. Get ready to start turn 4, and guarantee it next turn, things are going to start to get crazy. So turn 4, the threat is up to 8 again. Again, we're at the bottom of low threat. So this time we're going to start out with Glenn, and we're not going to use any actions to lower the threat. We're going to take Glenn and move him 4 inches forward to that supply token, and we're going to search it. So Glenn makes it to there, he searches the supply token. We're not really worried about content at this point, so we're not going to draw a supply card. But there is going to be a new special rule that's going to come into play, and it says walkers in the darkness. It says you can't see them, but they are still following. At the start of each turn, after the supply counter has been searched, roll a blue die for each board edge, and that many walkers are going to enter play from there. So at the start of turn 5, we're going to have lots and lots of walkers show up on the board. All right, so now we have the supply token, we have to get off of the board. So we're going to start out with Rick, and we're going to try to drop the threat as low as we can. So first action is hold your nerve. All right, so Rick fails at that. So next we're going to take him and run him 8 inches over there closer to the house. And we're going to try and clear that as a path for Glenn to go down. So we run Rick over there, and that's going to draw in the closest walker to him. And then for Michonne, same thing. We're going to try to reduce the threat with her. So Michonne's able to drop the threat down by 1 to 7. And then second action, 8 inches down, again trying to clear the path out for Glenn. So Michonne makes it down to there, and that's going to bring in that walker that was in contact with the fence, up and across it to there, and we'll spin the figure around so she can face her enemy. So that's all of our survivor actions. Check kill zones. There's no one that's going to move from those. So we'll go to our next event card. Fire. So +1 to the threat, back up to 8. And it says at all threat levels, a fire breaks out. If there are no burning tokens in play, the player with initiative must choose a flammable piece of scenery and place a burning token over top of it. So that's what we're going to do. What's more flammable on the board right now than this pile of pallets right in the middle of the board? And for a flaming token, we're going to drop a flaming walker on top of it. He's not going to move. He's just there to remind us that that is indeed on fire. Alright, so now we got a big pile of burning pallets in the middle of the board. We're going to up the threat by 1 again. This time we're at 9, so we're in medium threat officially. And we're going to start the melee phase. This looks like a weird scene from Cops. We've got a zombie walker on the driver's side of the car, riot gear Rick on the other side, and they're going to come into contact with a punk rock zombie. So we're going to have Rick against one walker in melee. So again, Rick just manages to knock that walker back and prone, and now we'll come around here and go to Michonne against one walker. And we're going to go ahead and reroll both of them, being that the walker blanked. Alright, so after that combat, we have lots and lots of prone walkers on the board. So before we go ahead and end turn 4, let's go back and roll to see if any of them stand back up. So this will be the walker in the green hat, the punk rock zombie that Rick knocked prone just now, and the one that Michonne knocked prone down there by the fence. Alright, so at the end of turn 4, just so you can see how many walkers are currently on the board, we're going to go ahead and up the threat by 1 to 10, and at the start of turn 5, we're going to bring on a lot more. Alright, start of turn 5, the threat has gone up to 10, and now we're going to start rolling to bring lots more walkers onto the board. So you're going to see some numbers show up on your screen there. That's going to be the board edge numbers. We're going to roll a blue die and then bring that many walkers onto each board edge. So onto edge number 1, number 2, edge number 3, and finally number 4. Alright, so after bringing on 8 new walkers to the board there at the beginning of the turn, we're going to go ahead and officially start. And we're going to go with Glenn, and the first thing we're going to do is use that Tactician again to drop the threat by 1 to 9. And second action, we're going to change our path, and instead of going along the front of the house, we're going to go straight down the middle of the board the way we came. So we're going to run 8 inches that way and finish our move down here by the police car. And we're going to go ahead and roll the tread lightly to see if Glenn makes noise. So Glenn, continuing to be a ninja and go around silently on the board, he doesn't make noise. So next we're going to come to Rick, and Rick is going to use his first action to try and hold the nerve. Rick is really struggling in this game to do most anything. Can't lower the nerve, can't kill a walker. So what we're going to do is have him run around the back end of the police car and engage that walker in front of Glenn. And hopefully he can take her out this turn. And finally down here with Michonne, again we're going to try to reduce the threat and then go up and engage the walker right in front of her. Alright, so we bring the threat back down to 8 into low threat. And then she inches up into contact with that walker again. Alright, so having no kill zones to check for this time around, we're going to go ahead into our next event card. And we're going to have Grim Recognition, so +1 to the threat, back up to 9. All threat levels, we're going to have someone recognize one of the walkers. So the player with initiative chooses any survivor within a standing walker's kill zone. Chosen survivor must panic in its next activation. So for this, we're going to pick Michonne. Alright, so event phase done. We're going to up the threat by 1 to 10 and go into melee combat. And again, we're going to have Rick against a single walker. And I guess at this point, it's kind of expected that Rick is just going to tie combat and push that walker back an inch. And then down here, we're going to have Michonne against one walker. And again, we're going to reroll both of them. So not that rolling a 4 in melee combat, especially against nothing, is a bad thing. It's just when you're trying to get that headshot and you can't get it on a reroll either, really sucks. So Michonne just knocks that walker prone again. Alright, so here we are again with 2 prone walkers. We're going to go ahead and roll for them to see if either stands back up. So that walker in the green hat that's been prone for a couple turns now. Start turn 6, threat is up to 11. And we got the wide shot again because it's time to add more walkers to the table. So again, there are the table edge numbers. We're going to go ahead now and roll and bring on that many new walkers. So on side number 1, side number 2, number 3, and side 4. Alright, so that is 9 additional walkers brought onto the table this turn. Add that to the 8 from the last turn, 17, and the 10 that we had there from the beginning. 27 walkers now on the table, and we've only got 1 prone. So let's see if we can start making our way towards that edge. And we're going to go ahead here and start out with Glenn. And Glenn's going to use the tactician rule to drop the threat 1, back down to 10, and then 8-inch run straight towards that corner to get out of here. Now we're going to go ahead and roll to see if Glenn can continue moving in silence. So we're going to hop up and out of the tray, and Glenn's still going to stay silent as he runs across the board. Alright, so as Glenn continues to run silently down the board here, we're going to come over to Rick and see if he can lower the threat before he runs up to catch up to Glenn. So Rick attempting to hold the nerve. Finally, he gets it. So we drop the threat down to 9. And then that follow-up run is going to bring Rick right down here in front of Glenn. Rick is going to make noise, which is going to draw over the closest walker, which happens to be the guy that Michonne hasn't been able to put away. So he's now going to move over into contact with Rick. And now for Michonne, because of that Grim Recognition card that we drew last round, she's going to have to panic. So we're going to go ahead and roll to see what Michonne comes up with. So Michonne with the panic dice. Question mark means we get to make 1 action. So with her 1 single action, Michonne is going to run over closer to that corner to try and get ready to escape. So that movement is going to bring Michonne over here right in front of the billboard. And again, we're going to bring in the closest walker to her. So he comes up into contact. All right, before we continue on with our regular turn here, we're going to go and take a rules break. And that's because a couple of events ago, I drew the fire card and placed it on top of this pile of pallets here. Now this pile of pallets, we counted it as 2 scenery points. So whenever fire is applied to something, you're going to place a burning token on top of it, which we just used this walker for. That piece of scenery is then going to gain the beacon, burning brands, and flammable special rules. Now what beacon does is it's going to create noise each turn at the beginning of the action phase. So what we should have done is moved the closest eligible walker into contact with this piece of terrain, which we're going to do now. So now that this walker is in contact with this flaming piece of scenery, he's going to get a burning marker, which will be indicated by the little orange token down their nearest base. In addition to that, at the end of the phase, we're going to roll the 50-50 die. And if we roll a badge, we're going to add another burning token to that. Once the number of burning tokens go beyond the scenery points, so once we get to 3 burning tokens, that piece of terrain is burnt up and we get rid of it altogether. Now, if the walker that's on fire gets into contact with someone else and starts melee combat, they're going to get an extra red die because they're on fire. And then in the end phase, we're going to take the walker that has the burning token on them and we're going to roll the 50-50 die for them. If the 50-50 die comes up as a blank, then that walker is going to continue to be on fire and move around as normal. If we roll a badge, that walker is going to be laid prone and then the burning token is going to be removed. Kind of like stop, drop, and roll. All right, so now that all of our survivors have taken their actions, we are good to go into the kill zone phase. No walkers are going to move because of that, so we're going to go into the next event card. And we have the hunger. So +1 to the threat, we're going to be up to 10, and in medium, So each player rolls a blue die and moves that many eligible walkers towards the nearest survivor. So we're going to go ahead and move 2 walkers towards the nearest survivor. So we go ahead and move Grandpa Walker into contact with Rick, and that police officer Walker is coming up behind Glenn. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and up the threat by 1 to 11 and start the melee phase. So we're going to have Rick against 2 walkers this go around. Alright, so Rick against 2 walkers. Typically the walkers, because the outnumbering rule, would be rolling 3 purple dice. But because he has the riot gear on, it says that our opponent must discard 1 die of their choice from their survivor attack rolls. So we're going to get rid of 1 of those purple dice, and Rick is now going to be rolling 2 white and 1 red against 2 purple dice. So Rick is finally able to be of some use here in the end, and he's going to get rid of 1 walker and knock the second one prone. Now we'll come around here to Michonne, who's going to be fighting against 1 walker. And again, we're going to re-roll both of the blue dice here, just trying to get that headshot. And so Michonne is able to get rid of that walker as well. So we've got 2 prone walkers left on the board and 1 walker that is on fire. So we're going to start rolling for all that stuff and then get ready to end this turn. All right, so we got lots of 50-50 die rolls to get through here. So this will be the walker with the green hat to see if he gets back up. This will be the walker that Rick just knocked prone to see if he gets back up. This is the pile of pallets to see if we add another burning brand token to that. Remember, if there's a badge, we add 1. If there's a blank, we leave it as it is. And then finally, this is for the burning walker that is in contact with that pile of pallets. So the threat has been up by 1. We are at 12, almost into high threat, and there are tons and tons of walkers on the board. You can see that we've got this nice clear path down there, almost off of the board edge. I don't think we're going to get there this time around, but we're really close. So let's get back to this side right here. We'll put those table edge markers up there again, and we'll go ahead and roll the blue die to see how many new walkers we are going to bring on. All right, so side number 1. Side 2. 3. And 4. All right, so we bring on a ton more walkers. I don't even know how many are on the board anymore. All right, so before we even go into any survivor actions, the burning pile of pallets is going to create noise and draw on the closest walker to it, which may give Glenn a break there. So that's not too much of a bad thing. All right, so we're going to go over here to Glenn now for his first action. I'm going to use that tactician rule to lower the threat by 1, back down to 11, and then 8-inch run towards that corner. Down to here, and you can see the next turn, Glenn should be able to get off of the board. So we're going to roll to see if he made noise during his run. All right, so finally, Glenn is going to make noise as he almost makes it off of the board right there, which is going to pull in the closest walker to him. All right, so we'll move back here to Michonne, and Michonne is going to attempt to lower the nerve for her first action. So we'll drop that down to 10. And then second action, just shimmily up here to help out Glenn in combat. And then back here to Rick. Rick is just going to make a sneak action forward to try and keep up with the team, which should put him at enough range to run off of the board in the next turn. That's going to be all of our actions. We'll go ahead now to check kill zones, and you can see that no one is going to move around because of that. So instead, we're going to go to an event card, and we draw Rouse Lurkers. So +1 to the threat, up to 11, still in medium threat, which says as in low threat. So as in all quiet. Okay, we have no discarded lurker cards. Low threat says Red walkers are placed in contact with each supply counter. We don't have any supply counters left, so we go straight to medium threat. Blue walkers enter play. Like we need any more walkers on the table at this point. And of course, where does that walker come on at? Right where we need to get off at, right in the deployment corner. So event card being done, up the threat by 1 to 12, and we'll go into melee combat, where we're going to have just the one here with Michonne and Glenn against a single walker. So now Glenn is geared up to defend in combat, but we got Michonne with us, so we're going to go ahead and try to eliminate this walker. So Michonne rolls her 2 blue. Glenn is going to have 2 red as his base melee, and he has no melee weapons. He's just carrying around that riot shield with him. So we're going to roll 2 red and 2 blue, and remember the blue are re-rollable against a single purple for the walker. So we get lots and lots of wounds inflicted there and 2 headshots, so that walker is way gone. We got a couple things to roll for in our end phase here, so we'll go ahead and do that before we end this turn. All right, a couple of end phase items to take care of here. So we're going to have first the prone walker near the burning pile of pallets. Then we have the old man prone walker. Then we have our burning pile of pallets itself. If we roll a badge this time around, that whole thing gets removed and it burns itself out. And the burning police lady walker that is in contact with it. And so at the end of turn 7, this is what our board's going to look like. That pile of pallets has burned itself out in the middle of the table there. Our heroes are just about to get off of the escape edge, which is a good thing because there are tons and tons of walkers all around the table. So we're going to go ahead and up the threat by 1 to 13 and get ready to start what will hopefully be the final turn. Start of turn 8, threat is at 13, so we are almost into high threat, but this should be a quick turn. We're going to start out with Glenn, and the victory conditions for this game say that we have to make it across the board, search the supply marker, make it back across the board, and have at least 2 survivors exit the board edge where they came from. So Glenn has the supply token, so we're going to start out by having him run right off of the board edge here. So Glenn goes ahead and makes it off of the board edge, and we are just about done. Now we can just take Michonne, have her run off the table edge as well, and that's going to end the game. Michonne's going to create noise, move over that one walker to where she ran off of, which was about right there, and just because they don't want to leave anyone behind, Rick can now make an 8-inch run action and get off of the board edge as well. Alright, and that's going to end this game. So we make it off the board edge with all 3 survivors, taking no damage to any of them. And all said and done, there are over 30 walkers now on the table. And we started out the game with just 10. I hope you guys watched the entire playlist. That's all 7 videos from the Safety Behind Bars series. This was fun to play with. We used a lot of cool terrain. In this one we had this blown out house and the billboard. We got the fence out there. The fence makes an appearance in a lot of videos. But we got to use the police station, broken down as the prison. Lots and lots of good battle reports. Make sure you guys go back and at least watch number 6. That's where we show off the great single player rules that Mantic put out there. Subscribe to the channel. We got a special battle report coming out next, which is going to replay the eeny, meeny, miny, mo scenario. What happens if there was a rescue team that came out and tried to stop Negan before he killed any of those? So that's going to be a good one to play. And then after that, we're going to make it into Woodbury. So like I said, hope you guys subscribe to the channel, go down, like, and comment on this video, and I'll see you in the next battle report.